Well, today we're speaking with Rob Wolf, and the topic is supplier management and sourcing. So, Rob, can you first provide us with a brief background of yourself?
Sure. I'm a graduate of Penn State with a degree in logistics, and I'm one of the few people that 20 plus years later, I'm still practicing what I went to school for, and been in the supply chain my entire career. And also through that, I've continued my education by getting my master's certificate from Michigan State University in integrated supply chain. And also recently, APICs, I became certified in APICs with certification in logistics, transportation, distribution, and as well as certified supply chain professional. A couple other certifications along the way. I'm a lean black belt and green belt certified and project management qualified. And, now I'm here giving you a little sourcing, management, and evaluation, little tips for the viewers out there.
Great. Can you give us a background about the topic for today?
Sure. Like you said earlier, it's going to be on supplier management, sourcing, evaluation. And so you're like, what does that mean to a company out there or someone in the purchasing field or what have you? If we back it up, traditionally, purchasing people would need raw materials to make something. And they would go out to suppliers and say, I need your best price. Give me your lowest price. Well, what happened is, the last 20, 30 years, businesses realized we might be better off if we do a little more sourcing. We call it smart sourcing or smart procurement to give us a competitive advantage to work with our suppliers, to integrate with them. And what we mean by that is, what is your company's core competency? Focus on that and outsource the rest of the stuff. And to give an example, let's say you're a vineyard in California. Well, obviously, your specialty, your core, you make good quality wine. Do you want to make the bottles? Do you want to make the boxes to put the wine in? Or do you want to own the transportation? Probably not. You want to stick to making wine and then outsource the rest of the stuff. And some other examples I can give. Many years ago, Ford Motor Company, Henry Ford wanted total control of everything. Now, that's the one advantage you have of being a vertical company, but you lose efficiencies. He actually had rubber tree plants he was growing because he wanted to make his own tires. And more recently, the last 20, 30 years, 7-Eleven actually had their own cows, and they had their own milk that they were, that's what they used for their milk. And they were even doing their own payroll at the store level. And they realized, wait a second, let's outsource those things and concentrate on our core business here. So those are a couple examples. Now, what are some of the trends affecting supplier management, evaluation, sourcing? Well, globalization. 50 years ago, you most likely did business with people that were in the same town. Then you went outside your town, within your state, across state lines, and now it's global. I know you and I are talking, we're halfway around the world. Who would have thought we'd be doing this, 20 years ago? Now, this is an interview, but this is how people conduct business now with vendors across, countries. And obviously technology plays a part in that. That was the second item I was going to talk about. But also there's regulatory policies. Sometimes governments get put regulations out that forces companies to go to other suppliers, and you have to manage that as well. Sustainability. And what does that mean? They call it the triple bottom line. And that is your financial, your social, and environmental responsibility. And to give you an example that most of our viewers would know is a lot of clothing companies were getting themselves in trouble. They were outsourcing the work overseas, and it was later found out that these were sweatshops that were unheard of. We thought were unheard of, but there's child labor laws that were in place, people working really bad conditions, and that was negatively affected by that company that was doing that stuff. So be conscious of that as well when you're outsourcing. Dependability of your suppliers is a reason why people are managing suppliers. If your supplier is late, quality's bad, a number of reasons, you're going to go to different suppliers. You have to manage your suppliers. And last but not least, the customers are driving this. Customers want faster, cheaper, and better. And that's forcing the manufacturers and the companies to become better at what they do. So now we have trends affecting it. So what are some of the barriers of companies getting into, supply management? Sometimes a company doesn't have the technology in their software to know where they're spending money. Now, if it's a medium or large size company, they're losing a lot of money here. You need to know where you're spending your money with your vendors and why, and go after that low hanging fruit. If you've got 3 suppliers and supplier A, you've got 75% of your money you're spending with that supplier. And that could be a good reason why you're spending that much money, but you need to know why. The other items, sometimes there's a lack of supplier interest. So if I'm a manufacturer and I'm dealing with a supplier and I explain to them, I need you to come on board with me. We need to get more streamlined, more efficient with our operations and shrink that timeline down of when you can make it and bring it to me. Some suppliers don't want to do that, believe it or not, because they feel that, well, if I work with Rob, then I'm going to get less business. So they actually don't want to get involved in integration. Sometimes from the other side, there's organizational reluctance. There's lack of proper staff with the skills. Procurement is not seen as strategic. Those all fall within the company. And it kind of gets back to the old school. Well, we've always done it this way. We're working like this, like a silo mentality. Why would we want to bring someone else in? So those are some of the barriers that most of those can be overcome by the company, but you still need to look outside and make sure your suppliers and you've got the technology, what have you, to do the strategic supply chain management. Now, once we have that, we've got a base of, the trends affecting it and the barriers. Let's look at the things that most businesses purchase. The first 2 are minimal, your non-critical items, office supplies, MRO supplies. That's probably about 5% of your purchasing. So you probably not going to spend a lot of time on that. Then your critical items. Now, these could create a bottleneck with your company. They're high risk, they're unique, but not a lot of money you're spending. You need that part, but it's probably not a category for supply management and sourcing. The other 2 leverage items. These are your basic production, your basic raw materials. I mentioned earlier about the vineyard with boxes. That's a big one. That's where your biggest bang for your buck's going to be. And then other things are strategic. This is what gives you a competitive edge. That's probably about 20% of your spend. But if you look at the leveraged items, your basic production, almost commodity type, that's about 70% of your spending. So those are the items that you want to be looking at to get your biggest bang. So if you've got a couple suppliers, now how do you evaluate them? Now, I've got about 10 items that I'll rattle off. The first 2 are going to be your biggest: price and quality. That's probably going to be 50% of your weighting. But then after that, you've got transportation, the speed of delivery, getting to your facility. And speed of delivery, what I mean by that is, and transportation, it kind of goes hand in hand, but transportation, I look at it as on-time delivery. Is your supplier getting to you on time? Because in this world of lean, if they're expected to be there today and they don't get there tomorrow, you just create a bottleneck. So that's something to consider. But also speed of delivery. If you've got a vendor, I'm in Florida, and if I've got a vendor here in Tampa, he's right down the road. Now, if I've got a vendor where you are, Dustin, like I said earlier, we're halfway across the world. That's on a container ship. We're going to have pipeline inventory we call in transit. So that's something to consider. Is your company willing to have inventory in transit for 6-8 weeks at a time? Service capability, and that would be VMI, POS data, point of sale data. Does your supplier have the technology to integrate with you so that when you sell something, it kicks back to them saying, oh, Rob's company sold 10 units. I need to replenish him with a pull strategy of giving him 10 units. Make sure that they've got the technology. Labor status, is the facility, union that they always tend to go on strike every 2 or 3 years? Or is that facility, do they have a lot of temps that they have a high turnover rate, and that could affect the quality of your item? So, give that a rating. The financial stability of a supplier. Did you see on Dun & Bradstreet or any of the other areas that show the net worth of a company, are their ratings going down? The capacity to produce your product. You could be going to a supplier and you need 1 million units, and you ask him how many production lines do you have to make this unit, and you go through the numbers and you realize he's not going to be able to produce this much. He's going to have to go out and hire more labor, what have you. So make sure that he can produce what you're looking for. And there could be government regulations in certain countries. Maybe there's a country that doesn't want to do business with the United States. Be conscious of those, not so much they don't want to do business with the U.S., but for terrorist reasons and what have you. Just make sure that you're okay with that country. So what you do is you give each one of these 10 categories a weight. So it could be 10%, 5%. It could be minimum. It could be a non-issue with this. But you've got your 3, 4, 5, or maybe you have all 10 of these items. So that's what you weigh each item. And then when you go to these suppliers, you give that supplier a number rating for each category. Obviously, the person with the lowest price would get a rate of 10. That's a good number. The lower, price, or the highest price vendor would get a 1, or however you want to do that scale. But you're going to give it a rating for each of the suppliers. And when you're all done, you multiply those up, and then you'll have a number for the best supplier. And that's kind of how you go after, you evaluate your suppliers, and you try to keep that apples to apples and what have you. Why is supplier management and sourcing important? It's your company. It's your reputation, not the suppliers. So a couple examples. There was a case study where Mattel, the toy company, outsourced a part. I don't know what part it was, but that part had lead in it. So you can imagine the recall, catastrophic marketing nightmare they had to recall all those products because they had lead in them. So again, they probably didn't source correctly to make sure that in their request for proposal that they demanded no lead in the parts. One personally with me was I own a 2013 Nissan Altima, and noticed my air conditioner was not working after about the 4th year. So it was a bad compressor and had to get replaced. But when I went online, I realized that seems to be a common theme with that year's model. Now, I'm certain Nissan corrected it, but they were getting some bad press on the internet because some people's compressors were going belly up at 3 years. So again, make sure you're strategically sourcing for quality. Lastly, when you manage your procurement, you can discover things within your own company. And what I was saying earlier, do you have the technology within your company to see where you're spending money? John Deere, at one point, were buying hundreds, not just tens, but hundreds of different types of gloves for all their employees. And then they were, reselling them in different stores, and they realized, wait, let's bring this down, and they could get better pricing from their manufacturers. But that's another way that procurement can save some money. So, the big thing is, I'll close it with supplier management, evaluation, and sourcing. Make sure you're aligned from the top down of a company. And that's a common theme you hear a lot, but it is true that if you're an international company or even a national company and you're based in the southeast of the U.S. and you've got an idea to do some of this supplier evaluation and the corporate headquarters is in Chicago, Illinois, and they decline on that, say, no, 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 don't bother with that, we've got it taken care of, that might be a struggle. But just make sure that you've got the upper management's approval, to go through and evaluate. And, then procurement, purchasing, that can be viewed as a value add rather than a cost to the business. There's still some companies out there that view purchasing as well as other areas of supply chain as a cost of business, but they can also be viewed as giving that company a competitive edge with their pricing and how they go out sourcing, and can get them to the next level and move forward. So Dustin, hopefully that gives the audience a quick blueprint of just things to look at, a little different than how we purchased items 20, 30 years ago, but that seems to be the trend now, moving into the next 10, 20 years. And if you had any questions, concerns, feel free to ask me, or you can look on my link profile, Rob Wolf, CSCP, CLTD, and take a look at my profile as well.
And thanks for sharing today, Rob.
Okay.